I now give the floor to the Russian Federation.
Thank you, Mr. President. We wish to welcome the fact that the Foreign Minister of Colombia is personally present here, Mr. Carlos Ruiz Trujillo, Carlos Holmes Trujillo, and the Special Representative of the Secretary General and Head of UNVIM, Mr. Carlos Ruiz Massieu. We thank you for the report that has been submitted. We concur with the colleagues who have already spoken insofar that the peace process is at a critical stage. We highly value the contribution of the verification mission in the country to post-conflict peace building. We are aware that support of the United Nations is eagerly welcomed by the parties, all Colombian stakeholders, including the government, participants in the peace process, indigenous peoples, and civil society as a whole. This speaks to high trust. To high trust in international staff and their objectivity. At the same time, of course, the main responsibility for the peace process is borne exclusively by the Colombian people themselves, not by any external factors. And based on the report before us today, despite certain progress that has been achieved, the bulk of efforts to build peace still lies ahead. The return of some parties to the peace process to an armed struggle reflects the fact that not all in the country are pleased at the implementation of the final peace agreement. The Secretary General cautioned about these risks in previous reports, and at present it is being reported that another 8,000 participants of the peace process are in the at-risk group. The situation gives rise to heightened concern and further attests to the fact that peace is not irreversible. However, we emphasize the fact that the armed confrontation is not acceptable. Social cohesion can be achieved solely through wide-ranging dialogue without preconditions and in the legal fold. Violence to resolve political differences is not acceptable. This also fully applies to the pre-election situation. We cannot but be troubled by reports in the report that during this period there were 54 incidents of electoral violence, including 7 murders, 5 attacks, 2 abductions, and 40 threats to people's lives. Beyond the emergence of new challenges and threats in the Colombian peace process, there remains an urgent challenge. There is a difficult web of problems linked to ensuring safety and security for the participants to the peace process and civil activists. To address this, there's a need to bolster the presence of state institutions in areas outside of the capital. There's a need for progress in humanitarian mine clearance programs, in the conduct of agricultural reforms, one of the key facets of the peace process, and the implementation of crop substitution programs. There is an importance to build trust of people vis-a-vis the peace process, to which end there's a need to make greater progress in legal, socioeconomic, and political reintegration for former combatants and to ensure that they gain employment. We regret we share the fact that what was stated on 30 August by Cuba and Norway, the guarantors to Colombian peace negotiations. There's additional difficulty due to the decision to halt negotiations and for the forcible repression of rebels from the ELN following the 17 January terrorist attack. Without a doubt, we condemn this attack. However, we believe that without dialogue with this group, genuine peace in Colombia will be impossible. We call for a difference to be resolved with Cuba vis-a-vis the question of negotiations there and to comply with the guaranteed protocol that has been assigned with that country. On the whole, we wish to reiterate that the ticket to achievement of peace in the country is comprehensive and full compliance by all Colombian stakeholders with their obligations under the final peace agreement. We believe that this needs to be the priority of the government, and this needs to be at the heart of social discussions. We fully support the call of the Secretary General that all disputes need to be resolved through existing legal mechanisms, and any legislative initiatives need to undergo wide-ranging social discussions. And this is how, step by step, we can build a society which means peace. Turning to views on the impact of external factors on the domestic political peace process in the country, to believe that key agreements on peace in the country following decades of armed conflict were arrived at by the Colombian people themselves. The Colombian people themselves, demonstrating national ownership for the future of the country, shouldered the obligation to chart the course towards peace, the peace process. This is a commitment to peace. This became a hallmark for accountability and a great source of pride for the Security Council. We trust that this approach will be maintained. We are pleased to learn about a commitment to the peace process, but we call for further efforts to be undertaken. The international community, the UN, the Security Council, and most importantly, the Colombian people themselves anticipate from the Colombian government that there be full compliance with obligations. Without this, there is no way to view the armed conflict as over, and we trust that the a verification mission in Colombia will continue to play an important role in the peace process. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for his statement.